What's up, man?
How you doing? You alright?
Yeah, you're a big draw. Like, there's a bunch of names that log in. I don't know. I don't know who any of these people are.
Mostly confused Argentinians and Japanese people, I'm sure.
Well, I know of the Argentina piece, but ellos va a pensar lo que yo no puedo hablar, porque yo hablo como boricua, como la ciudad de Nueva York. In Argentina, they talk like Spain, so I can't even do it. I can't even figure it out.
Dude, it's funny. Like even the grammar, like they say it's like they're all Italian and Spanish over there, but they say it's like Spanish with an Italian accent. But I spoke to a Mexican the other day, and she was like, "What are you talking about? That's not how you say that." And I'm like, "That's how like 50 million people say it."
But that's a whole nother story. Just like there's different English in different parts of the country. So that where because my exposure to Spanish is so eclectic. So I would say probablemente yo puedo decir lo quiero decir, no importa, pero usualmente yo voy a cambiar la palabra para en la cabeza a la frase, a la palabra aquí. Si yo no sé la palabra, yo voy a cambiar la palabra en inglés. Pero entonces la frase no, it doesn't make sense anymore. So
Yeah, yeah.
when I was at Roddick's with the kids. It was more of Andy Roddick's brother, the tennis academy in San Antonio, and it was only one American. It was mainly from the islands or from Mexico, obviously based on where it was located, and at that time. There was also reasons why some of the Americans chose to go elsewhere, because that was when the other tennis academies really blew up and et cetera. Anyway, they would all laugh at me because they're like, "Yeah, you're not wrong, but that's not how you say it." So
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me, like somebody will always know what I'm trying to say, except it's not the right way because I'm just trading the words. So I don't know the idioms. I don't know the special ways to say things.
The goal of
So.
communication is to understand and to be understood.
But as you can see, my el asiento no es el problema. Like I can
Yeah.
if you don't see me like John Cena, you might not be sure that I'm a gringo. So the
Absolutely, man.
and so I remember I got picked up by the driver of the family I was working for in the Dominican, and he refused to talk to me the entire ride home because I'm trying to talk Spanish. I know I'm saying it right. They told me that he was embarrassed because, of course, in the Dominican is probably the most. I'm not going to say the worst because that's not the right word, but it's the most garbled Spanish. It's the most slang Spanish that there is. So he was embarrassed to talk because, of course, if you pick somebody up at the airport, the American, it's like they have this perception of class, which is certainly unfortunate, but it's whatever. I understood what they
Yeah.
meant, but he wouldn't talk to me until the second day because he was embarrassed that he thought that his Spanish wasn't going to be good enough for. Because he was a worker, like even though he's driving an Escalade, working for a very famous, wealthy family in the Dominican, but clearly Dominican is lo más peor. Like that's a
Dude, I
truck.
feel like the Cuban Spanish is the worst. Like I cannot understand Cubans for the life
Oh,
of me.
that's second. Don't worry, that's second. That's second. Don't worry, that's no problem.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
because the Cuban Spanish I don't think has as much like slurred words. It's just
Mm.
the accent and the marbles in your mouth, sound. But
Yeah, yeah.
Cuban, at least in my experience, in Dominican, I don't even know what they're saying. Like it's like bad rap. It's because like if you change the word, it sounds like it rhymes in rap, which is what an English teacher would call like butchering the English language. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I think most people that I know in that are Dominicana, they will admit. But then Argentina's on his own plan because there's no. Most of the rest of South America is very easy, and Central America is the easiest. That's like it's almost like textbook.
It's weird, they're like they don't use like the two form, they'll use like vos, and it's weird, like it almost skips. So I know they use vos in Colombia, for example, but then anywhere between Argentina and Colombia, they use tu. And then once you go above Colombia, it's back to in like Mexico and Central America. It's weird.
I think whenever I'm there, I've never found like I'm like a lifesaver. Like when we would have games, particularly in places where saving lives is a very important thing, like Venezuela, which we should never even be in. No one should be forced to go to that place. But it's especially during look, anyway, you shouldn't be going to anywhere that's about to have a war. It's but. I don't. So they say vosotros instead of tu, but vosotros is for multiple.
No. So they don't even use that. So like for example, if you would say ¿Cómo estás? You wouldn't say bien y tú. You would say bien y vos.
I never heard that.
They don't even use like vosotros. They use ustedes.
Yeah, that's how I would say it. Like Yeah, I learned vosotros, but then I even learned when I was in like 7th grade, like no one uses it.
Yeah.
But you just say I don't know. But that's so we could do. I'm about to do a podcast in Spanish, but I have it all like in front of me, like I can read it from Spanish. But that's where like the little ones they laugh because they know what I'm saying. So like the one that they would always laugh at me was I would say rápidamente instead of rápido. And they're like, I'm like, quickly. And they're like, it's a word. It's not like not a word, but it's not how you say it. I said, but you know what I'm trying to say, punk. So they, I think in that last group of kids from Roddick, I think we had one girl who had already declared, but what had happened was Andy's agent had passed away recently. And obviously in tennis, the age is irrelevant. Like you can declare professional at a very young age. You can declare at 14 or 15 years old. So usually the kids that were going through there were like, it was like, when were they gonna go pro officially? When were they gonna finish their pro-am schedule? So the level of talent dropped a little bit because he had passed away and he wasn't bringing in studs. So if you look at the wall of all the banners of the kids, like it would be dominant. And then IMG really started to take a lot of those kids that were coming there, and it was just very small. I mean, I think the couple years I was there was never more than like 10 or 12 kids in the entire program because it was just, that's what it was. It was only for the best kids that in youth tennis. So we had one girl who was still a professional, but not terribly dominant. And I think some of the other kids that I lost touch with, they were either like their decision was to go to American Division I. Or declare professional at the age of 17 or 18, whereas other kids would be pro by the time they were 16 and already have, like, they were signed with somebody or whatever. So none of these kids would be signed with anybody because they didn't want to jeopardize their collegiate status.
Yeah.
But I've had other opportunities to talk Spanish. So I think this, Keir, but I feel terrible that when I met you the first time in person, I didn't recognize who you were. You're sitting in a group now because I think we had communicated for several years. Your presence on social media and the internet is very impressive. It's obviously people will have awareness of who you are, but it's an interesting thing in social media where sometimes if you don't see the person in real life, you don't know. And look, I feel horrible, and I really do. I'm being very honest because there's people that I know I've met them before. Like, I know they clearly look familiar, and that probably says I might not really be listening to them as much as I should be. Because look, when you're at a conference and you're working, and look, you see me speak in person now. Like, I've been coached that you should feel exhausted when you're done talking. So,
well, that's the thing. I spoke to you afterwards. Well, here's the thing. What I didn't tell you. I didn't meet you, but I have stood next to you. at Boston Sports Medicine Performance Group in 2015. So you were there, and I believe, you were talking to Jay. So we never got introduced, but I was like stood there, like just like listening to you speak.
You were like this. You're like this, right? You're looking down because I'm not that tall.
And I was just hanging out with Jay at that, and then we spoke. I think it was like the year after, because I was at the World Cup when we did that podcast. And then, of course,
I remember that. Yeah.
4 years later, so it was 19. Yeah, you had just finished speaking, and obviously getting mobbed, people around you, and I just kind of said, "Hey, what's up?" And I didn't want to bother you, but then I tweeted out like, "Oh, and it was the best presentation that I saw that weekend." I thought, "Yeah, this is absolutely the best." And I tweeted out, and you're like, "You're here?" And I was like, "Charlie, you looked me in the eyes." I said, "What's up?"
Well, here's the line that I haven't used is I should have known it was you, but I might have thought it was Ryan Felipe. So how often do you?
Ryan Gosling. Budget Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. How often do you get that? You got to get that a lot.
If you say quite a lot, you look like a dick. But I quite a bit.
Oh, whatever. I mean, whatever. Like that's like you just said to me my talk was the best that you saw that weekend. So now there's like nine or 10 other people that are all mad now. Just because you gave an opinion. God forbid, even though your opinion is correct. So obviously, Ryan Gosling was at Drive. Now, I never actually worked with him, and I didn't see him there for a long time, like maybe the first couple years. So one time, I'm working with a high school level girl. So her mom was always there. I would typically never work with a female underage without their parent there. Mm-hmm. And Ryan Reynolds, who was much more congenial than Ryan Gosling, just to me. Because I worked with him, and he's a little bit more as advertised. I'll give you a cool story about him afterwards as well, which I have said many, many times. So if anyone has heard that story, I don't know if it's my best Ryan Reynolds story, but it's a damn sure good one. So anyway, the girl starts like hyperventilating, like she's marking out, like oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And so both Ryans are in the gym at that particular time, and so we're done. And she's like looking, and she's like acting like Tiger Beat Central, like she's going nuts. And the mom goes, "Well, I'm gonna go over and ask him for his autograph." And I said, "The hell you are!" He's at this gym, so people like you don't ask him for autograph. Yeah. She's like, but it was the mom, not the daughter. That story was a little bit better because. Up at the front desk where we went to schedule her again, I think like she was on my left and Big Ryan was on my right, just doing whatever he was at the counter. And I go like this with the girl. I put her here, I take my hands on her shoulders and put her here. And then Ryan looks down and she was like she couldn't even talk. It was that was the yeah, I never dealt with he would always like be on his own. Now I'm sure he would have worked with Don much more than me, but I never really dealt with him, and he was never really there. Like after a certain year, he might have never really been in the city. But one of the best Ryan Reynolds was. So you see, I'm wearing the greatest story ever told. So the blackest night in Green Lantern. So I have every Green Lantern. I have something of every color except pink, because that's not okay to wear. Actually, I bought it for Allie because it's more appropriate for a female to wear. So I'm wearing an Orange Lantern shirt, which most people might not even know exists. So a client goes, "Oh my God, that shirt is so cool." I'm like, "Yeah," like he's a dork, and he's like, and he's like, "Oh my God, like is that Voltron?" Like I guess because you see me wearing a shirt, you're gonna think it's a superhero shirt, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's Voltron." And then Ryan Reynolds in front of it, because his voice is like it's like one of these iconic. You hear him talk, you know it's like, oh my God, it's him. He goes, "Charlie, you're such an asshole." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, because I have no idea if you're serious or not. And I'm like, hold on a second. If you don't know if I'm serious or not, that makes me a good actor. And he's like, "Don't ever talk to me again." Yeah, he was more like in at certain times he would be more integrated. Like he didn't. Yeah, it was a safe place for those type of people. So I don't know why Goslin, who looks just like you, would never talk to nobody. So anyway, that's
He definitely he seems like more congenial. Ryan Reynolds like definitely more of an extrovert. I think like Ryan Gosling tends to be more brooding, from what I can tell. But
yeah. I'm very hesitant to label anybody with introvert or extrovert because sometimes like they'll be the opposite, and sometimes people will be very introverted by their nature, so that they overcompensate.
yeah,
But I just I don't have too many not positive experiences with most of the celebrities because like they know that they're in a place where no one is going to treat them in a way that annoys them.
yeah.
So if they need to be left alone, you kind of know. Versus other ones, you know. And then sometimes it's just like a fist bump or whatever. Like you don't ever like you kind of have a good idea for the ones that I deal with. So they're just regular people, just like professional athletes. It's the other thing too in New York City. Like I've walked, like I walked out with like A-list celebrities, and nobody knows who they are. Because in New York City, if you're like 6'5", all right, you're probably the tallest dude that's walking around, and it's not like this incredible, sight. They're not Diesel or whatever. Like David Harbour is a really big dude, and he's lost weight recently, but for other roles. So he's the sheriff in Stranger Things, and
Oh
he
yeah,
was so he's just a naturally big dude, but no one would ever notice him. Like you could be walking in the street and there'll be tons and tons of people, and you just happen to make eye contact because it's right around the gym. So like if you actually know the person's face, oh yeah, hey, what's up, Jake? It's like Jake Gyllenhaal walking by. But like no, so he can walk. Like most of these celebrities can walk. Now the athletes is different. Like that's
yeah.
with the like if you're 6'8", like you're like 7'5" in New York City. Like so if you and that's more for the basketball guys. Now if you see, there was one day there was a like like a financial literacy. I think that term didn't exist a couple years ago, but that was for NFL players. So I had 4 NFL linemen, training at like 5:30 in the morning before they went up to Bloomberg. So that's noticeable if you see 4 300-pound men,
That's a lot of math.
yeah, but even that, to see a 300-pound fat slob, 5'9", in New York City, that's normal. So, but it's when
Yeah,
you
yeah.
see the basketball guys who like normal scant build at 6'6", it's like they think it's like Shaq or something. Like it's crazy. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's when was the last time you were in New York City? You been there?
Yeah, man, I've been there a bunch. Like the guy that's been tattooing me most recently, he's from LA, but I think he's high profile enough that he'll come into New York once a month. So when I feel like being highly irresponsible with money, I'll go up and meet him in New York. So I've been tattooed by him 3 times. So he did the biggie tat.
Yeah.
And I've been up there twice. So like the last time I went up was maybe a year ago, but I'm due for a trip up. Like I love it. I love it as a city.
Oh man, to me it's like Vegas. I'm in and out. Like people would always ask me questions, and I worked there for 10 years. I still have 2 offices. I'll be there tomorrow. But
Yeah.
man, I could never. I can't. I don't think I could live in any city. But most of the cities that I have been like for weeks at a time are cities
Yeah.
that you're probably not supposed to be for weeks at a time, like New York City, Vegas, Beijing, which is on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Which it's when the folks of China think they're the epicenter of the universe, they're really not wrong, just not for the right reasons.
Yeah.
I mean that's I was on a call with them yesterday, and like this is the longest I haven't been to China, and I miss it. But it's oh man, what a different. It's impossible to describe to people
Yeah.
at a certain
I did
level.
one week. I did 1 week, and it was enough. It was just like crazy. It was a blessing in disguise that Exos did not get that contract.
Oh man, so let's run with that. When because you've done you mentioned Japanese, you mentioned Argentina, you've done a lot in rugby. So what has been your lineage of working in high level sport? Because now you're a little bit out of it and doing some things more on social media. So what's the little story there? Maybe we can come up with some
Yeah.
your turn to tell some stories from each of these little pit stops.
So, wanted to be a pro rugby player. Realized at 15, 5'10", slow twitch, white, unathletic, not brave, not skillful. So I was like, right, coach.
Not brave, huh?
No. So kept playing. I briefly made a foray into a psychology degree, abandoned that, went back, did kinesiology, graduated, realized as I started interviewing, never coached anyone, terrible coach. Took 2 years to even get the chance to intern for free for a year. That I did into a job. So that was my first pro club. I was at London Wasps, who were at the time coming off being one of the most successful clubs in England. So hopefully I wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. But yeah, about 2 years into that, I decided there was a bunch of like political stuff going on where it was obvious to me that if I stayed in the job that I was in, I was going to be there for 5+ years, and I didn't want to get put in a box. I thought I was better than the job that they gave me, which is, ideas above my station. But so that was when I did the Exos thing. I went over looking to get a job for them in China, which didn't happen, blessing in disguise. But then I left in 13, did a stint with a club one level below to be the head guy because there was a question on my resume at the time. He doesn't have adult experience. So I was like, okay, took a pay cut, went down a level, put on the big boy pants, did that. And then I decided at that point I was going to move to Australia because my ex-girlfriend was Australian. And this is where, a lot of the relationships and the cultivation had paid off, because within 6 weeks of being in Australia, I'd done the Exos mentorships. I'd put in money that I didn't really have at the time, stayed in contact with all of the tutors. And then one of the tutors from the level 2 was working for Exos in Argentina. And he and I were, going back and forth. And then when he upped tools and left on very, very short notice for a family emergency, I was the person they called and said, oh, can you be in Buenos Aires in 2 days? So I said yes. And then obviously on the way over there, I realized I don't speak a fucking word of Spanish. And, so that I did for 3 months. And they asked me to stay. I get back to Sydney though. And then Sydney Roosters, who are, big time rugby league club, probably, if not the most successful rugby league club in the world. They're very, very close to it. Very, very high profile. They were the Premiership champions at that time. And
rugby is different than rugby league, correct? Yeah. So explain that at some point, because I'm both of which are also different than Australian rules football, which is different than soccer, because they actually call it soccer there with like they do. So there's and look, I've been there. Aaron Coots is somebody that's been very useful and important to me. So anyway, keep going, but then maybe explain all the difference between all those different field or pitch sports. Yeah.
So I went there to head up the academy. So I was basically asked to do for them the job that I'd done in London. And within 2 weeks, I got called into the office, and they were like, "Oh, would you like to be the head strength coach for the first team?" And I was like, "Absolutely," because I had
no, I'm out of here. No, screw you. I'm done.
That's what I should have done. That's what I should have done. But I had this date in my head of like, by the age of 30, I want to be a head strength coach in the Premiership. But I was 28, and I was like, 2 years ahead of schedule, brilliant. And there was a reason why they needed somebody on short notice, and it was an absolute disaster. And I left after 6 months, did not have a job to go to. And that was actually to go full circle, the reason I asked to do a podcast with you 6 years ago was because you had spoken so publicly about your time with Marsoc and, you know, a public failure. And I related so strongly to that. That was why I reached out to you to do the episode. But anyway, through absolute dumb luck, the guy selected. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think it's important. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think you know and other people know. I don't care that there's no championship belt for certain things, even though like when you say that my talk was the best at a particular conference, well, you damn sure better believe I tried to make that better than everybody else's. But there's no way to objectify that or be determinant. That being said, I think you know, being able to talk about failures just means so much. One of which is like you're past it to a point. And I just wish more people like, okay, I might do that a lot. Well, that means I failed a lot, but ultimately I just wish other people would talk about failures, because it not only shows that you're human and vulnerable, but you can learn so you don't fail. Like you know that's I think that's commendable, because no matter what anybody thinks, it's not easy to do anything. Just to be right here, right now, knowing that there's people listening, that's people think that's like so easy to just do. It's not. You just got to kind of like let go and think that if having a good conversation, which might include challenging things to talk about like failure, or you just expressing your own vulnerability by like you wanted to talk to somebody else because you identify something, that just helps one person like be able to not have that happen to them, or handle it in a safer way. I just, you know, I wish more people could do that, but that means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. So, you know, the guy that they had asked to replace me with the Pumas dropped out, and I had to replace him. So I became my own replacement. And they said, you know, you must be with them till the end of the World Cup. If the All Blacks come up knocking, offer you $1 million, the answer is no. Are you in? I said, yep, I'm in. And I stayed with them till the end of the World Cup. And we overachieved. You know, I'd say the highlight was we played the second, at the time, the number 2 team in the world in the quarterfinals. We were ranked like 12th, and they were expected to beat us. And after 13 minutes, we were 17-0 up. We ended up putting 40 points on them. So that kind of like, that probably got me recruited to go to Japan. I initially intended to stay with Argentina, but then Exos broke off, or they broke off their deal with Exos, non-compete, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I went out to Tokyo basically to cash out for 2 years. And there's good and there's bad. The good is that it got me to where I am now, and you can't wish it away. You can't say what if, because you might wish away your entire life, but it definitely did sap me of every last drop of enthusiasm that I had for rugby. But there was a paycheck associated with it. So, you know, that was a good thing. It helped me get the visa to be in the States. And after 2 years of that, I switched over to college football. Started at U of R, like Jay basically got me the job at U of R. And I started again completely at the bottom, $14,000 a year, because I could, you know. And I started chipping away at that. I almost immediately got the girl that I was seeing in Tokyo pregnant. I now have almost a 3-year-old son. But I didn't have health insurance at U of R. So then, I think you know him, Eric Coram, very kindly leaned over to me at CVASPs in 2018. Yeah. And said, hey, what are you doing here? And I said, I don't know. And he said, come to William & Mary. So he basically picked me to help him implement the high performance model that he was trying to build at William & Mary. And I was brought in basically there to be the director of athletic performance. So at the FCS level, normally you're going to have one coach that oversees a flagship sport, but they'll be responsible for the however many sports they have. So that's what I did. It was kind of like a 2-pronged thing where I was responsible for the physical prep in football, but then also staffing, developing that model for the other sports.
This is William and Mary, right? This is William and Mary.
Yeah,
And U of R is U of R is Richmond, unless you don't want these things said.
Oh no, you don't. Yeah. So, and last year there was a lot of things came to a head. I've not made any secret of the fact that basically the pretenses that myself and Eric were brought to the school quickly evaporated. And I've said to many people that there's a difference between talking progressively and acting progressively, and only one of those has a heavy price tag associated with it. So the way that they had spoken about, here's what we're going to do, here's what we're all about to bring us in. We're going to have an athlete-centered high-performance model. We're going to, put winning at the center of everything. We're going to treat our athletic department like a high-functioning business. You're going to be rewarded according to your contribution. When you come in and basically,
this is all too eerily familiar.
Yeah. You're going to have to tread on some toes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to go in like a bull in a china shop and be like, oh, you're shit at your job, all this kind of stuff. But what I'm going to say is like, hey, here's the job that we've been given to do. Here's the rationale. Here's how we can work together to achieve that and so on. But if after 6, 12, 18 months, you're still not on the bus, it's not, can I get you another seat on the bus? It's time for you to be run over by the bus. And the school would never, they did not have the appetite to take the necessary decisions to advance towards what they said their goal was. And Eric had enough and left. My assistant, Scott, who is awesome, Eric and I pushed him out the door to go to Arizona. And by the time both of these dudes had left, they didn't replace him. So I took on their workload. Plus COVID. So I was in that gym for 14 hours a day. And by this time, I'm a single parent. And the biggest argument against me in court is he spends too long at work. He's too committed. He's never going to be around. So I thought, fuck this. To me, it was like, I've been given the choice between good parent and good coach. And it's an easy choice to make. So now I'm full-time strength coach network.
Yeah. Now that's, I think it's commendable. Whether anybody listening has parallels, obviously you know that I do, to the point that in those same situations, I believe a comment that I made a couple times is, "Why the fuck did you bring me here?" And again, I also learned a lot, and as the years go by, the more positive from those particular situations, and I'd be lying if I said that's only an isolated thing, because I think when whatever special means, when you're confident and you feel like you have something special to offer, I'm not going to say what special means, because it can mean a lot of things. These things happen, and you get pushed. This was the first year for me that I saw some things out there that would bring me back to the NBA, and people are always like, well, why? Where those situations have now turned out to be similar. Luckily, I didn't get into those situations, but people always ask, like, well, why? Why do you search for these types of special situations, regardless if you think you're special yourself? And the one that gets people to shut up is because the greatest warriors want to prove it on the biggest of stages, and I'm never gonna not say that. So I'm also now going to be very selective, and I don't. And just because I showed interest in a couple of these NBA things, it doesn't mean I was going to do it. They were still going to have to meet certain things, and I think, as you know, and as a couple other people know, the likelihood, if something by my definition special happens, it'll probably be in American football more so than basketball. Whether I'm blackballed or whatever it is. I do find it still very, very difficult to understand that when things don't work out, but there are situations where it's like, if I talked to the person for 5 sentences, that would have been 500% more than I've ever talked to them in the past. Yet they're very, very comfortable speaking in, if it's not derogatory, but a non-glowing way. I'm like, how do you even know this? We've never even talked before. So I was told there was, and this situation would have been very, very silly. I'll be honest now. I just wanted to kind of see how it would go. They had a high terminal position for fitness and a high terminal position for medical, of which, you know, if people know my philosophy, that's a disaster. Like, that's just, I want to drive. No, I want to drive. No, I want to drive. Like, what is injury prevention if you have two people that are, you know, because then you got one person doing whatever they want to do and the other person doing stuff that doesn't work. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I was interested to see I wanted to see what the team would say to some of these things, because plus there was also a head athletic trainer involved. And now I was told on the first call that this terminal medical position would have the opportunity to fire that person. And I'm like, I'm not saying I would fire him. Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I probably would, but I would still communicate and not just walk in there like this, because I've come to say that is not a wrong way to do things, but it's not always the best way. Like, you can't just assume any one way is the best way, but if they said that was available, then you should certainly consider it. There was other position in football where I promised I wouldn't do that, just based on the logistics of how that particular situation, you know, I'm not going to say what it was because I don't know that other people know how close I was to that opportunity. Yeah. And there was, you know, surrounded by a lot of shenanigans. So, you know, I was told that they wanted someone more medical. I'm like, good luck finding a physical therapist, an ATC. Like, when it comes to athletic trainers, I don't think I know 7 athletic trainers anymore that I could recommend or that I would be excited to have work for me. You know, 4 of them work in Canada right now. Like I don't even know any American trained, because my model is so far away from an athletic trainer doing a lot of different things. I don't even know who they are. So good luck finding this special person that's a PT, ATC, NBA experience. Like, oh my God, like, and that's all I get. That's all I get in terms of, yeah, if you haven't heard anything by now, you're probably too medical. And even that is like a blessing. Like, I actually got something. I actually got some actual response that was very, very timely. Like, it wasn't like 10 days after I sent the message. It was respectful. It wasn't like, dude, screw you, kid, or something like it. That in itself is completely rare, because that's probably true. They probably perceive me to be something that they didn't even bother to find out. And I think that relates to what you're talking about in a lot of very celebrated positions in our profession, as probably other professions as well. If there's a chance that that this person could break their box, they don't even like, they figure out a reason why not to do it. And that's why sometimes these stories that you tell or I might tell, they don't always look very becoming, because of course nobody wants to hear about negativity. I think you're doing a great job of turning it into something that people can learn from, and I'm hoping I'm doing the same. They don't happen that much because usually the decision maker is so scared to actually, you know, whether they put it in writing or they say it like, this is what we want, when in fact there's no chance that they're ever going to do it.
What it was is we realized that I'll say it, the AD.
Oh, it's fine. Like,
said,
just say it's your opinion. Just say it's your opinion, and then you're absolved.
Anyway, so she's like, you know, here's what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, we basically had this meeting where she said, you know, 30% of my coaches don't like you. And I was like, and that's the 30% you need to fire. But what it was, she had figured out that there's now this, like, all the nicey stuff has been done, and now that it's coming to a head, it's like you can side with Eric or you can side with the sport coaches, and there's like this entrenched culture that needs to change. Because my belief is, unless you're perennially challenging for a title and you want substantial change, you know, if you're at the bottom, it's not going to be incremental changes and tweaks that get you to be a perennial title challenger. You need wholesale fundamental change to like upend things, especially when you're against the clock. And
that's a point I want to bring up when you're done, when you're up against the clock.
Well, anyway, you know, it's apparent that unless you're willing to do all the public hangings and, you know, the box cutter scene from Breaking Bad, all that's remaining is get the new facilities built, because it's much lower risk and lower cost to point and say, look at all those facilities I built, rather than fire a bunch of people, change the culture, roll the dice, and it might not pay off. And of course, the money comes from the sport coaches, not from the strength coaches. And that was when the legs got cut from underneath us, because given the choice between the two, you go with the sport coaches, which politically is smart, but it completely destroys the project that you say you're about.
No, it's for me to, and I want to get to the on the clock piece, but I would just say, like, I was the wrong person for that job. Like, that's easy for me to say 10, 11, 12 years later, having accomplished things that I probably would not have accomplished, including having a master sergeant that I was there with do the first toast at my wedding 2 weeks ago. So it's easier to look at those things than it was then, when I was sitting on the third floor of my house, of this obscenely inexpensive house in the South that I thought I would never ever be able to afford again. You know, I was wrong. Like, now, it wasn't because I did anything wrong. It was because they had no structure to a culture, and I was just wrong. They didn't interview me hard enough, or they paid me too much. They should have offered me less money, so I wouldn't have taken the job, because obviously in certain situations there's certain things that have to happen in the hiring process. In other words, the whole thing was just fucked up from the top, and the way to have fixed it would have just been a longer time frame, and I think in whether it's high level North American sport or whatever, you know, the more time you have, which is why the time stone is the most important stone of all the infinity stones, is think about it, like, you could just like go back and change, and then just go left instead of going right. Like, everything else is solved. And I look back on that situation, that if I had, because I would say at that time, I would do everything the exact same way. Charlie now in that situation would have done it totally differently. But if I had known or had agreed with myself and made one of those agreements of the 4 that I should give this 4 years, 3 years, whatever, instead of not having any idea, and like, I'm coming in right now, I know how to, because I did know how to do it. And the similar situation, you can't possibly bring in this upper middle level management and not allow them to have any say in the people that are in the weeds. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you know, now that situation has some very unique components, because it's the United States government and how the contracting process is done, and how a contracting process is done with a human resource. Because if you have to write it down, basically, you have to say everything. And like, if you say you want a Green Lantern shirt, you better say it's the logo of the first edition of Blackest Night. Because if not, you're just gonna get the Hope logo on a green shirt. So if you don't say exactly, well, how can you possibly say exactly what you want for a human? It doesn't work. A missile, or if you describe a toilet, you can, knowing that you're only going to need so many of them and no more, you overpay for them, so that, because it's better to overpay for the product because you don't have to pay for building it, and you don't have to build the factory, and you don't have to do all this other stuff. I mean, that's part of the American contracting process. Whether it works or not is for other people to decide. It does not work in evaluating a human, because how can you possibly write down what a person should, how they can interact with others? You basically can't interview them. Like no one can, unless it's underhanded, under the table, which of course happens, only for the benefit of the contractor, not the people that, you know. So there was this incredible confusion, because these people were told certain things, and they were just doing, they were under a particular impression. Well, nobody explained that to me or Brad, who was my one up. And it's like, now, he didn't give a shit. Like, he was just there because for him to make what he was making and live in the boonies where we were living in North Carolina, that was enough for him and his level of cowardice and what he wanted. But, you know, none of this was discussed. No one brought, because he kind of knew, like, yeah, I would be able to carry the ball, which is what they told me. They'll be like, you're like the GM. You know, like, you know, this is what, because they wanted me to do this, and I wasn't sure if I was going to do it if I wasn't number one in charge, because if I was, I would have a stronger voice against what I was seeing. But because we got interviewed, and I'm like, how did you decide that if I was the right person for this? Why didn't you ask me, hey Charlie, do you want to do this even if you can't pick your physical therapists? And oh, by the way, not only can you not pick them, you can't tell them what to do. I'm like, oh my God, like, is this the dumbest thing ever?
You had authority without responsibility. Oh no, well, responsibility without authority.
So one day, and if you're echoing it from something that I've said in the past, I don't know. But one day, one of my undoings was I was very, very close with a capital T commander, Major General Paul Lefevre. And whenever I do this, Paul, you know, you owe me a chat, because I know he watches all these things, and he never will talk to me because he knows he fucked me. We're working out, and we're doing like sideways skipping in a circle or something like that. And we would talk openly, or in that world, freely. Now remember, if you're boys with the head, no, I'm not boys with the head coach. I'm boys with the owner of the team. Okay, This is a 2-star general, and you know, invited me over the house. You know, I mean, it was. I think there were lines that probably offended a lot of other people, but what do I know? I wasn't taking. I obviously lost at the end. And after we were explaining, he said exactly what you just said. He's like, Charlie, I get it. I totally understand what's going on here. You have the responsibilities to do certain things, but you don't have the authority. I'm like, do you have some of that authority? Maybe I could have a little bit of it, because it was, but going, it was like October 16th or something like that when the 1 year would have termed up. If I had just kept my mouth shut and just collected my upgrade in salary, which would be miserable to what I do now, and enjoyed this house that I never could have afforded in New Jersey or Philly, and then waited to redo the contract on October 16th, maybe everything would have been different. But I chose, and that's where when you at that talk, like, you know, when I talk about when you start to, how do you solve these issues? You don't solve them by the athletic director that you're referencing. You don't solve them from the people that interviewed me or from the commander. You solve them by having an analysis of the values of people and who are decisions. And I learned another line from MARSOC in the Marine Corps, where just because someone makes decisions and doesn't make anyone more or less important. Because if the commander has an order and nobody's there to follow it, nothing gets done. And if you don't listen to what he or she says, then the whole thing is fucked too. So it's that's where these situations are solved. Even if you have values of an organization where the skill level is not perceived to be elite by someone outside, but everybody is in line. Everybody is in accordance. 1 + 1 = 3, or maybe we'll say 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1.25.
Yeah.
But now imagine if you have elite thinkers that all act like an organism and a system over top of it. That's what you did not have in these different situations. That's what I didn't have. And that's really what I strive to do in whether it's in business, because in business it's easy because you can measure business. It's that little box at the bottom right hand of the sheet. It's like, is that number in red or is that number in black? And if it's sufficiently enough in black, everybody, whatever you did worked. But in our world, in terms of where it's not this directly, because it's not wins and losses. That's I've already proven that in terms of the soft data that we have looked at now over the last 5 or 6 years. In terms of instead of measuring wins and losses, as we've looked at just from Toronto, not the country of Canada, the amount of Division I basketball players developed from this one geographical area. So why did we choose that? We chose it because it is a direct reflection not only on strength and conditioning and performance, but also how it communicates with the technical, but not technical, but not tactical, because we're not evaluating wins and losses because that's what I say, soft research. If I included the senior national team overall record, we don't look so good anymore. Yeah. But is that real? Is that really what is there? Like you can say it, like it's fine. Like, well, at the end of the day, I'm not the one on the phone trying to recruit the 22 NBA players. Instead, we get maybe 6 or 7, and we change coaches all the time. And that's not something that we can impact. So how can we create this sports science question? And again, I would put that all on people. Because the right people were able to create a system and then populate the system with good people. That's not what happened at William and Mary. That's not what happened for me in Marsoc or some of these MBA opportunities. It's not the right people for the right systems. And when anybody could objectively accept failure or disappointment that way, you're in the right place. You're good. Like everybody, when you can feel good because you have enough other things going on, then it seems like it makes it doesn't make it still stings. It's like a bee sting, but a bee sting goes away in time. Maybe you got big anaphylaxis and eventually it goes away. But right now your landing point is running a website and a lot of the material people are familiar with from the Central Virginia Sports Performance Conference. Is that right? Yeah. That's a big chunk of the materials. Yeah. Yeah. So you're what else is on there? Let people know what it is and what some of these learning opportunities are at your website.
So I mean, over the last, I would say 18 months, that's when we've really put a lot of time and effort into it. And as I'm sure you're aware, a lot of coaches will be aware, they learn the hard way that there is this disconnect between what you pay so much money for to get your degree, what the elite environment demands, and then what the certifying bodies have to say about that. So when you talk to the certifying bodies, they'll say, it's not our job to prepare coaches for the elite level. We're just pass, fail, yes, no, you can train safely, you can't. And when you're dealing with universities, it's such a research-centric model, which for the most part works backwards from sport, not forwards. So they're always one step behind. And for me, when I made that jump to sport, I told you it took me 2 years just to intern. And it took me many, many more years after that to get what I feel, I'm still learning, but to have a flavor of what I feel like I needed to know in terms of knowledge, different skill sets, and how to organize my thoughts to be productive in my career. So what we try to do is fill those gaps. So you mentioned CVASPs, We have monthly speakers. There's a lot of applied knowledge. The barrier is you must work at the elite level to present to our members, and it must be practical applied information that people can use in the real world, which is why you spoke for the site. So we have that. We have a discussion forum. We also have career resources. So stuff like, how should your resume look? How should you network? We connect people, all over the world. We have members in like 35 different countries now. How to get ready for job interviews, the business of coaching, contract negotiations, side income, insulating yourself from the realities of coaching, all these different things. And, a big thing that we tried to do in the last year is recognize these segments of our membership and to try and give coaches what they need at that particular stage of their career. Because when I started the thing, 6 years ago, it was how do you break into the industry and stuff like that. We've got members now that joined the site in 2015 when it started that have just medaled with teams at the Olympics. So the nature of the problem has changed. So now we have, resources for how to get that momentum at the start of your career. How do you become a director? And the answer is obviously by being the best coach in the room. But as you mentioned, you can be the best coach in the room and still suck as a director. So now we have that third segment where it's how do you become that hub through which information passes and become a facilitator and a communicator and all that kind of stuff. And that's what we're trying to do. I half joke that our mission at the site is to make the NSCA and the UKSCA embarrassed to exist, but there's a grain of truth to it.
Well, I'm not sure that will happen. So I'm not sure that's totally the case all the time, particularly given some of the things that I saw a few months ago. But what's the website and how can people get there, Keir?
It's strengthcoachnetwork.com. You can follow me. You can follow Strength Coach Network on Instagram and Twitter. And for Sprint Timber, we're doing Sprint Timber. It's the thinking man's Squat-tober. throughout Sprint Timber, if you sign up to the site for the year and you use the code SPRINT in all caps at the checkout, you get $50 off the year. And you can also go into a prize draw. We're giving away $2,000 worth of Exergo stuff. So the G Sprint, the G Flight, and the G Strength.
Okay, that actually reminds me when it talks about sprinting, we can't finish here until you talk about your new your test, your sprint your repeat sprint ability test that you did not name properly because you didn't put your name on it. Hey, that's bad business. That's bad business because if you ever sell it, then somebody owns your name, and you don't want that to happen. So I think you did okay. Where are we at with that?
Listen, I have an ego, but I'm not so much of an egomaniac that I needed to shoehorn my name into this test. So I was at William & Mary. I thought, right, I'll call it the Tribe Test. And you know what it was? You know how Eric thinks. I've been in conversation with him. Patrick Ward was very, very helpful to me in getting my hands on time motion data for the sport of football. And it sounds obvious when you just talk about it in other terms unrelated to football. You say, right, do you agree that the more similar a test looks to the event, the more predictive power it's going to have to be as to your ability to perform in that event? You say, of course. You say, right, do you think that a 90-meter sprint is going to be highly predictive of a 100-meter sprint as opposed to a 400-meter sprint? And everyone will be like, of course. So looking at the time motion data of football, it's roughly 6 on, 36 off, times 6, and then you get a long sit down, and then you just keep going like that throughout the rest of the game. And you actually get these big, big breaks throughout. Most tests that people use, 110s, 300s, gases, the 110 takes 16, 17 seconds and is not even maximal. So if the test is not maximal, it's not giving you any inference as to capacity. It would be like you with all your strength squatting 315 will say, right, what's Charlie's 1RM? I don't know. He lifted the bar. The 300 may be maximal, maybe, but typically it's a guy with a stopwatch going 51, 52, 53, and then guys timing their effort to coincide with the end. If it is maximal, it's 10 times the duration of the average play. It would be like me asking you to run a mile for me to infer your ability to run 200 meters at full speed. It's just so bioenergetically different. It doesn't make any sense. Same for the half gap. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're right there. We're right there. I have two starting, one starting level. We'll see if he starts, and one other starter, offensive lineman. That they both come off their coaching tree comes off the same tree. They are doing they're doing the traditional 300-yard shuttle, and for one of them, I completely supported the strength coach who was handling things on a day-to-day basis, and he wanted to because we had one group where there was multiple teams, so there was like basically 3 different fitness tests that we had to run before camp, and one of them was the traditional 300-yard shuttle. I think he got 1 minute break in between, and this is an offensive lineman, and he couldn't finish it, and I'm like, not only could he not finish it, but he that was maximal effort for him. It had nothing to do with any type of transfer or carryover to what he does as an offensive lineman at the NFL level. Yeah. However, how if he really, and he did, because he failed, so he really did try his hardest. That might take him. Well, first of all, it's ridiculous because the team's not going to do anything about it. He's a starter, second-year player, so he's not even. It's not like they're going to cut him for money because he didn't pass this stupid test that doesn't even make any sense to begin with. How long is it going to take him to recover? Because he has to actually do that test again in 2 weeks when he shows up to the city, and it's just so I and I'm sure many people, if they're watching and they deal with high school business or whatever, these are just ridiculous types of tests. But you have the answer. You have the answer.
Well, I mean, we used to put it to when we would argue with coaches at like conferences, or we presented at NSCA coaches about this. And I'll put it to you this way: if you want to be a virtuoso concert pianist, you practice the piano for hours and hours and hours every single day. If you want to be a Michelin-starred chef, you cook for hours and hours and hours every day. If your job is to operate in a 6x6 box and move 300-pound human beings where they don't want to be for 6 seconds at a time, run 300s. It's like there's a complete disconnect. So what we tried to do is we tried to say, how do we get a valid, reliable, repeatable, convenient, low equipment test that fairly reasonably represents the time motion demands of football, where we can measure performance. And what we came up with was the tribe test, which is 5 seconds on, 25 seconds off. 1, because it's up tempo, which is what we were doing. 2, because it's a round number. It still has to fit in people's heads when you persuade them. So it's 30 seconds. And we did 12. So the average drive is 6, but most games, the highest number of plays per drive is going to be roughly around 12. That's like a goal line to goal line drive. You will get some that are, higher up there, but they tend to be like triple option teams where actually you get even more rest. So a 12 play drive is probably about as tough as it's going to get in most game situations. There's been one 20 play drive this century in the NFL, I believe. And worst case scenarios can be more important tactically to the outcome of the game. So you might as well investigate them a little bit. It hurts. That means coaches like it. There's a little bit of salesmanship going on there, but it's still reasonable. And you sprint out to the 20, you cut back, and you cover as much distance as you can with the remaining time. And the reason we pick this in 5 seconds, the heaviest guy can get out to the 20 and still cover some distance back. And the fastest guys are not so fast. They can get all the way out to 20 and all the way back. We didn't want to do the repeat alactic test where it's just repeat 60s because 1, that's a lot of cones, and 2, it's a lot of risk. So you stand on the line, the buzzer goes out to 20, cover as much distance back as you can. You have 25 seconds to catch your breath, turn around and go again. And then you cut off the other leg, and you do 12 of those and your total yardage covered over those 12 is your score. So we can measure conditioning, or a surrogate measure of conditioning to the yard and infer progression. Whereas with the 300,
and there's
it's
no
a pass
failure.
fail.
Yeah,
It's
not
like
like you did.
it's like an IQ test that says smart or dumb.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think that's that in itself is a concept that maybe can stimulate or enlighten other people. Where it's just like bench press, which is probably a very foolish example for carry over to any sport. But there's no everybody gets to do it. Like and then you just create percentiles based on the relevance there. That's interesting. Where it doesn't matter if you finish it or not. You're going to get a point. You're going to get a score regardless of how far you crawl or not. So when the beep goes off, you don't go sit down. You keep going. You get credit for everything you do. And then I'm guessing over time you're going to look at positions and create norms based on positions, body weight, experience, etc., based on how far how much ground they covered. And then are you at a point where you have a recommended training protocol if you're not at what you think the norms are, because you might not have enough data yet for norms?
It's mostly inference. It's not like hard data, because truthfully we had 1 year of doing this, because then COVID.
Yeah, you're not there yet. Yeah.
But I think if you absolutely smoke the first rep, let's say you get 34 yards, like 34 yards is moving, because that's, I forget, it's fast. If you get 34 yards and then you have this big decrement in terms of your ability to score between the reps, to me that would suggest a high CNS, high alactic output, but maybe not the aerobic system to support that resynthesis between reps. If you have a so-so first rep but you're very, very consistent, to me that would suggest the opposite. If you have a guy that has a really good 40 in a straight line but somehow can't put it together to score a high first rep on the tricep, that suggests to me that there's some technique or something else going on with regard to change of direction ability. So you just get to look at things like that. Yeah.
I use all those concepts for my bike when I just do for myself, and it just gives inferences where I just pick a time and I give myself 3 or 4 minutes rest. I grade how I feel. So did I finish it? Did I answer the bell every time? Okay. Yeah. So let me increase the time of rest and see if I can go plus another 1, 2, 3 miles per hour. So I'm trying to learn, where am I at? Do I need to take more rest to keep my number high, or do I need to keep? Do I just need to keep the? I'm not going to go any faster. Like for instance, for a 30-second airdyne bike, I'm really not going to get to 32 miles per hour. Now, keep in mind, I'm 5'4", so everybody's relative. But I don't think I could. Like I give myself a 20 miles per hour flying start. If it's more, then of course the number is going to go up a little bit. But I don't. I think I can imagine staring at 31.9. I can't imagine ever seeing 32. So if I'm not going to get 32, well, then I just got to keep chopping off my time so that I can get more quality repetitions of that 30 seconds at 31 miles an hour, and that's how I'll get to 32. But another thing, though, is for that type of protocol, I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about it. I've made this up, which I'm always keen to remind everyone. Like, I've made this up, so if you never heard it before, it's we're talking about even effort, meaning I'm not trying for 30 seconds. I'm not trying to get like this and then just crawl across the finish line. I'm trying to keep it at as high a number as I can. And you can use RPMs, you can use watts, it doesn't matter, for 30 seconds. Because if I keep it here, even though I could get up to here, I'll taper off. Yeah. Now, if I'm at 30, I just have to, mentally tough get to 31. Yeah. And then, and over time, you have no way to ever improve. If you always go like this, you'll never improve. You're just rehearsing who you are. But the way you're describing, it's like, okay, let's pick a completely different protocol to beat up to increase our top end.
This is what kills me. So, you know, I've put it out there. I've now made it free. Like initially it was a paid thing. I put it out there for free. I'm like, hey, please, if you're going into camp or if you're going to, you know, this season, please give it a try. And you have people contact me and say, hey, coach, which weirds me out anyway. Use the tribe test for volleyball today, or use the tribe test. We did 3 sets today. We're going to do 3 sets tomorrow. And I'm like, hey, the expression of equality via a test is not the same as the development of equality via training. They're 2 different things.
Yeah. You have to, you know, the way that you're looking for value in that test is that you have to do something completely different than the test. I'm bastardizing a little bit because of this even effort effect, where I'm not looking to look at external load. I'm looking at, you know, what I think maintaining high enough heart rate over 30 seconds means to physiology. Now, and you can do both in the same training week, in my opinion. So that's no, because we saw it. So I think over those 3 teams that we had training together, just players that happened to be in the same training group. One was the traditional 300-yard shuttle, which was absolutely asinine. The other one was, I think, like 1050s. For a starting guard, because you know, of course, you know, linemen all stick together. I'm not sure which.
Maybe,
actually,
maybe.
Okay. So hold on. None of the players in the particular group that I'm talking about are on the Giants. However, I did allude to earlier that this 300-yard shuttle clearly comes off of a particular tree of coaching. So my understanding is that other teams also do that and have done it for a very, very long time. And then the third team, I think, did a bunch of repeat 40s, which again, I'm still not sure that's, at least it's less unintelligent than having that.
There was one NFL team that tried the tribe test this offseason.
Oh, good. Yeah. And and look, it's well, you know what, too? If they did some other test, and it shows completely different stratifications of how you would rank players based on this test of what they were doing versus the tribe test, that should make you ask some questions, because you know, like, one of them can't matter, you know, and then if they're totally different, one of them is trash, one of them is garbage, because you can't, like, you want the list, like, there's gonna be a third list of who you think you're, even if it's not your best players, who are your most fit players. Yeah. So that, and then you're going to look at the 2 tests and which one is closest to the list that you thought it was going to be. Yeah. And one of them is going to be close-ish, and the other one is going to be less close. They can't both be right. They're not going to be similar. They're not going to, the 300-yard shuttle or something more traditional and nonsensical is not going to be the same as this other test, because they're not even looking at pass-fail. You're looking at just how much ground did you cover? Like, it's not even the same thing. You're keeping the ground covered. You know, like it's. I don't get it, but I don't know. But no, you didn't bait me hard enough with naming that team. But I think you got it. I think you got it figured out. You could figure out where coaches across the league come from, and anyway. But I did my part. I didn't say anything. So. All right, man. Look. Always how this goes, where we never know what we're going to talk about. Maybe I had a couple things in my pocket with the Ryan Gosling stuff, but no. It's. I hope people check out your site and see if it makes sense for them. Lots of ways to skin a cat, but there's some ways that are better than others. So I hope that's what everyone's chase is. So. All good, man. Thank you very much for coming on, and you always know where to find me, all right?
Mate, honestly, I really appreciate it. You know, like I said to you after the CBAS presentation, the thing that struck me about your presentation was that I'd seen you speak in previous years, and it was evident that you know, even at that stage of your career, you're still learning, still progressing, still refining what you're doing, and it's a big inspiration to me.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate it. Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. That talk that you're referencing, people can get on your on your site, right?
Yeah.
All right. So your little boy is gonna get to get a new toy if enough people buy my talk.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
All right. Be well. Bye bye.